Hello, everybody. How's it going? I'm going to do something really quickly, and this has nothing to do with anything except for the thing that's going to happen later. So hold on. All right. I hope that came out the way I wanted it to. It's for the art for the YouTube video for later. It's for the. Oh, hey, I need to turn that off. What do they call those things? Not album art. That's for podcasts or albums. I'm excited about today's show. I hope you are too. Or today's gathering. Do we call this a show? I know I keep calling it a show, but that's because I think in terms of shows. Sorry, I'm just shutting down a few more things on my computer so that my fan doesn't kick in, and then we'll begin. Because I leave everything open on my computer, but then I leave my computer locked, so it's fine. I'm going to leave that one open, though, because I haven't saved everything there, and I don't have time, because we got a thing to do. I don't know. Anyway. Let's do it. Oh, really quickly. Hello, Bill. Hello, Chuck. Hello, Roger. Hello, Bill. Hello, Smoke Eater. Yeah, that's what it says. Hello, Frank. Hello, Matthew. Hello, Donna. Hello, Brian. Hello, Deborah. Hello, Webb. Got your email. I really appreciate your email. And I will try to get back to you soon. Hello, David. Right. That's Romper Room for right now. We'll talk to more people if more people show up. And I would understand if they didn't. I can't tell you how grateful I am that Apple sent an event thing, because otherwise, man. Anyway, here we go. Apple sends out another save the date, and whither the halo. It is Monday, the 2nd of November, 2020, and this is macOS Can Live. I was trying to remember if there was anything else I say there. I knew I didn't say my name, but then I thought, well, should I say something? Because I wait until now to say my name. Hi, everybody. I'm Ken Ray, welcoming you into another edition of macOS Ken Live. Kind of like macOS Ken, but liver. Second half of today's show, we're going to talk about the halo effect and whether it exists anymore. It was just the thing I was wondering about because of a couple of stories that I saw. Apparently, what do you call it? Pandora has now outed support for the HomePod and the HomePod Mini. In the meantime, Apple TV Plus is going over to the Xbox next week. Made me think about the days of the halo effect and thought we might talk about it here. That is the second half of the show. First half of the show, though, don't know if you've heard. I really don't know if you've heard because I haven't. Well, I've been on Twitter a little bit. Apple, of course, sent out an invitation for one more thing. And get your Zapruder film going. Because what do they mean by one more thing? I thought one more thing was the thing after all the other things. What? Yeah, we got something else to concentrate on, at least for the next 24 hours, which is fantastic. The one thing that we know that we're going to see, and we don't know it, but we know it because we're gonna, is an Apple Silicon Mac. It's ridiculous to think that that might not happen. Right now, the rumor is there are going to be 3 Apple Silicon Macs. I don't see why there couldn't be more. I want to say I said here, actually last week or the week before, everybody keeps saying, well, we know they're going to start at the low end. We know they're going to start small. And we don't know that. We know that a lot of people thought they would do that, and certainly that would be the safe way to go. But what I pointed out here last week was Apple actually said, and if you want to see one of these things running, you've been seeing it running because we've actually been powering a lot of this WWDC presentation using Apple Silicon. Now, obviously, they're not doing that on a 12-inch MacBook or a 13-inch MacBook Air or whatever, 13-inch MacBook Pro. They're doing that with some heavy-duty hardware. So why everybody said, but they're going to start at the low end for the consumer device, it seems like a safe thing to do. It seems like a way to put your toe in the water. They didn't put their toe in the water when they did the Intel transition. They started, I want to say, with an iMac. I can't remember off the top of my head. Please don't quote me on that. I know, though, that they didn't start with some tiny device that nobody would care if it failed. They started with one of their machines. To say they're going to start with a low-end machine this time seemed a little bit, well, kind of crazy to me. Now, VentureBeat says that this event is Apple Silicon Mac or Apple Silicon Macs, and that is it. They could absolutely be 100% right. At the same time, iMore says, no way. iMore says there's got to be more stuff there. Now, here's the thing. I can see the logic of both of these sides, right? Because what iMore is, well, no, let me start with VentureBeat. What VentureBeat is saying is this is the end of the presentation. In a normal year, Apple would have one, maybe two presentations, probably two. One that's about the iPhone, and the other that's about something else. This is, of course, not a normal year. Apple hasn't been dragging everybody from one coast to the other or from, one part of the coast to the other or anything like that. Apple has instead been doing these really neat infomercials. Last about an hour, maybe a little bit more, depending on if you're talking about WWDC or Time Flies or High Speed or what. Rather than having, one or two events where they bring everybody out, they've sort of been doling out the product releases in the fall. And so VentureBeat's argument is this is one more thing. There's the thing about the Apple Watch and the iPad. Okay, there's the thing now about the HomePod Mini and the iPhones. But there is one more thing, and that one more thing is this November event. iMore, on the other hand, says they're not going to do this just for a Mac. They think there are a bunch of other things that could be introduced out there. Trying to remember what some of them are. Why should I remember, though, when I remember I have it right here? There are, of course, the Apple, the AirTags, which are Apple's theoretical competitor to Tile. They're the premium over-the-ear Apple-branded headphones that we keep hearing about. There is a more powerful Apple TV possibility. And then iMore actually finished their list with another surprise. It's kind of catch-all, really. Could be anything is practically what they're saying at the end there. And God love them, they're right. Probably not going to be a TV, probably not going to be AR glasses. Otherwise, though, it could be anything. I like the idea of it being an Apple TV for a couple of reasons. First of all, it was a very colorful logo. If you haven't seen the thing, you can go to Apple's event page, apple.com/event. You can also go to YouTube and look for the placeholder video that they put up because they've already put up a placeholder video for the thing next week. YouTube, by the way, is the way to watch that because YouTube knows how to deliver video. When I was watching the High Speed event just a few weeks ago, I was watching it through Apple's event page on Apple TV, and it kept stopping. And I kept having to exit out and go back in, exit out and go back in. And finally, I just went to YouTube on my Apple TV, and it was clear sailing the rest of the time. So that's the way to watch it. Anyway, they've already prepared for that. The art honestly reminded me of the Peacock logo from NBC. Now, of course, they're not doing anything with NBC because Peacock is Peacock and whatever. And it's not so much like it that that's what you automatically think of. But there's the full spectrum of color and there was the motion. And I thought it's not going to be a TV event, but that wouldn't surprise me to see there. Also, where they are trying to make Apple Arcade more of a thing. Played a lot of Apple Arcade over the weekend, actually, because I got the Apple One thing, which includes Apple Arcade. And just like I said I would do, went back in, found a bunch of games, played a few for a couple of hours, can barely remember the names of them anymore. I'm sure I'm not going to go back to it anytime soon, except we're talking about it now, so maybe I will go back to it sometime soon. I think it's been 3 years since the last time they updated the Apple TV. Even if it's not a big deal, even if they don't talk about it from the stage or, in the actual prepared event, it would not surprise me to see an Apple TV next week because processor for the Apple TV is getting a bit long in the tooth. And if you want that to be a thing that people actually go to play games, and by the way, for me, it was fine. A friend of mine who is more of a gamer than I am said there was a little bit of lag. There was a little bit of je ne sais quoi. There was a little bit of something that made it not quite right. She thought it might have been the controller, actually, because I've got one of the Nimbus Steel controllers, because when they first introduced games, I thought, oh, this will be fun to try out. I was amazed, honestly, that the thing still worked, because I can't remember when I changed the batteries, because one of them is a battery one, the other one's charged, and you don't care about all my personal electronics. Anyway, A TV would not be an Apple TV. I don't mean a full-on television, obviously, because that's never going to happen. Shouldn't say never. I should also stop hitting the microphone and the desk. I mean, another one of the hockey pucks or something along those lines. Wouldn't surprise me. Obviously, that's not going to be the thing they finish with. That's not going to be the, and one more thing, the same silly thing that we've been selling here for like 8 years. That would be funny, though. There's also, iPhone socks. Could be that. Colorful, ridiculous. You wouldn't see that coming. See, because that's the thing. That's the thing about one more thing. And I don't, you, you remember when you didn't expect one more thing and then there was one more thing, right? That's the one thing that makes me wonder if there's going to be something besides the Max, something bigger, maybe something aspirational. And I know that's probably just wanting to wake up on Christmas morning to snow outside and presents you never expected. It's wanting something new, something different, something you don't expect. Because that's what one more thing was. Even though a lot of times it was something we expected. The last time I remember Tim Cook actually using the phrase one more thing was when he introduced Apple Watch, right? And we all knew that something was coming in wearables that day, but we didn't know exactly what. We thought it was going to be a fitness band, maybe it would be a smartwatch. Nobody expected exactly what we got. And so even though we all knew there was going to be one more thing, we didn't know what the one more thing was. The kid, quote unquote, the kid in me wants the one more thing to be something unexpected. Obviously, what I really want it to be is AR glasses, and I think we're still way too early for that. I don't think that's going to happen. There is another AR Easter egg in the invitation that Apple sent out. And this one, unlike the last ones, seems to actually have a hint as to what we're going to get. And the hint is a MacBook. I mean, it just is. If you haven't done it yet, what you can do is you can go on your iPhone. I don't think on your iPad, but on your iPhone, you can go to apple.com/event. There is the invitation there. If you tap on the black Apple logo in the middle of the screen, it'll do the whole thing where all of a sudden you're looking at your room and it says, point your phone at the floor and move it around. And then once you do that, or a flat surface, I guess. And then once you do that, this Apple logo appears, but it's laying flat. And then all of a sudden it rises up like the laptop or like the lid of a laptop. Excuse me. Manhole covers. Maybe they're doing manhole covers. Probably they're doing a laptop or a few laptops. So yeah, I'm not going to be disappointed by that. It raises just like a whole bunch of other questions for me if they go into laptops, because they're having an event for laptops. The events are about things that you want to get people excited about, right? With the exception of WWDC. And even that tends to bring a little bit of sizzle for the casual viewer. What's going to get people excited about the laptops they could go ahead and buy right now? Unless there's something different. What I found myself wondering earlier, and I'm not saying this is going to happen, it just occurred to me it's a thing that could. Is Apple about to salt the earth on price? They're never going to get as low on price as a Chromebook, but is the price of a MacBook or a MacBook Pro or a MacBook Air or a MacBook Apple or an Apple Book or whatever the heck they're going to call it, the Apple Silicon machines, could the price of that be something that can't be ignored? Because I'm assuming that is one of a few things keeping people out of the Mac right now, is the perception that it costs too much. If they actually lower the price on a MacBook and then they actually start advertising the fact they're lowering the price on the MacBook, does that bring people in droves? Now, there are still a few people that are going to be on the outside. Anybody who's interested in virtual reality is not going to come over to the Mac. Anybody who's a hardcore gamer is not going to come to the Mac. Can Apple play with price on this? And more to the point, will they play with price on this? Because of course they can. They've got more money than Croesus. So, I mean, they could easily lower the price. What I'm wondering is that something that they would think about doing to get people onto this new architecture? I also wondered if moving the Mac to the A series processors changes the way people interact with Macs or changes the way people buy Macs. That's actually two things. I apologize. Changes the way people interact with Macs on a retail basis versus changes the way we actually use the Mac. Because the way we use the Mac is going to change when they introduce Big Sur and whatever comes after that. Copperopolis, that's a city in California. It would be hilarious if they named one of their operating systems Copperopolis. A series gets updated once a year. I know one of the things that has frustrated Siri just turned on my iPad for some reason. I know one of the things that's frustrated Apple for a while is the fact that they're sort of beholden to somebody else's upgrade cycle. Would they, where they're coming out with new A series processors every year at least, does this change the way they encourage people to buy Macs? Would lowering the price of a Mac actually make it so that people would buy them more often, treat them more like an iPhone, where you don't necessarily get it every year, but you might get it every couple of years? And then I was thinking about the Apple for Life thing that we heard about a few weeks ago. This was a thing where Apple actually applied for a trademark. It was from CNBC, got it here. I want to say it's in Hong Kong. And the Apple for Life thing was not a gang. I would also say it's not a cult, but there might be people who would argue. What the trademark actually seeks to cover is the use of the phrase for retail store services and retail store services provided via communications networks, as well as financial services, financing services, banking services, financing of loans, extension of retail credit, installment loans, and lease purchase financing. This is basically what Tony Sacconaghi has wanted Apple to do for so long now. Get into subscriptions for hardware, get into bundles for hardware. Does an A series based Mac, so something that's going to be updated every year, but nobody's going to want to spend $1,500, $2,000 every year, or even every other year on a new Mac, would you spend $50 a month to rent it? I hate that idea. I think it's a horrible idea. I could see businesses definitely going for it, and eventually I could see consumers going for it too, because eventually you'll come to a place of like, but I just spent $4,000 3 years ago. These are all things that are just kicking around the head. I don't think any of those things are going to be announced next week. What's going to be announced next week is a Silicon Mac. Speaking of when and where, of course, nobody's going anywhere for this event. It's happening online. So you can go to the events page of Apple, apple.com/event. You can go to YouTube. I feel certain there will be podcasts. There will be live things. We'll talk about it that afternoon right here, wherever you're getting this right now, live on YouTube or on the audio podcast. And of course, I'll cover it on Mac OS Ken. Yeah, don't go to Cupertino for this because nobody's going to be there. Tim Cook's going to be, beer in one hand, bowl of Fritos in the other, feet up, watching it on his Apple TV. I love that image. We'll talk about the Halo thing really quickly. I want to hear what your thoughts are on this. I asked on Twitter, I said, hey, if you got any ideas, let me know. I know one person wrote and I forgot to write it down. I apologize, but I'm curious what your thoughts are about what we're going to see. In fact, I would love your ideas to drive this show tomorrow. So the thing to do, either leave a comment on this video or send me an email, info@macosken.com, info@macosken.com. I don't know if you got any thoughts I threw out there or thoughts on the things that I threw out there or any thoughts you want to throw out as well. Either leave a comment on this video or info@macosken.com. Now, in just a second, we're going to talk about the halo effect, but really quickly, I did want to ask you to do one thing for me, because this is the part of the show where I shamelessly ask you to do something for me. If you could let other people know about all this stuff, that'd be great. The one thing that I have never known how to do there are many things I've not known how to do, but in the 15 years of doing, podcasts, first for another guy and then for myself, and a number of podcasts throughout the years, both for myself and a couple for other people, the thing that I've never known how to do is let more people know about what I do. I mean, I hit Twitter and things like that. I have interactions. Occasionally I'll guest on other people's shows, stuff like that. But I got to figure the biggest thing I got going for me is you. and I'm very appreciative, and I feel bad, like, talking about you like a thing that could be used to my benefit, and yet I am gonna ask, if you enjoy this show, basically any chance, you have, and I'm not saying do it all the time, but if you could tell people on Twitter, "Hey, I just, watch the live thing," or, if you haven't listened to this podcast, check it out. Of course, if you could hit like and hit share and hit subscribe on YouTube, that would be fantastic too. And, thanks. I'm assuming you're gonna do it. Maybe you won't. Maybe my thanks were for nothing. Hey, maybe thanks for nothing. If you would, I would be grateful. Right. This other thing is really short because it's not well formed yet. It's just something I've been thinking about a little bit. There are two stories that are going to be on tomorrow's macOS Ken. As had been rumored, Apple TV, the Apple TV app, is definitely going to Xbox. It's going to the Xbox One, Xbox Series X, Series S series. I don't even remember what they're called. I don't know because I haven't really looked into it because I'm not buying a new Xbox anytime soon. I'm amazed that my 4-year-old Xbox is still great, and I assume I will continue to think it's great until I actually pay attention to the new Xbox. So the Apple TV app is going over to the Xbox. In the meantime, Pandora has released an update for its app that adds support compatibility for HomePod and HomePod Mini. And I was thinking about how the iPod was the halo device for a lot of people, right? Because the iPod only worked with the Mac because iTunes only worked with the Mac, and then they came out with an iTunes version that worked with Windows, and so of course that meant that the iPod worked with Windows as well. And at that point, all these people who thought that Apple stuff was stupid or it was toys or it was overpriced or whatever, suddenly they had access to this thing. They got a first look, they got a peek inside, and they liked what they saw. You could never prove the halo effect, but it would be really hard to disprove the halo effect. And so there was that. That primes the pump for iPhone. Now, iPhone also primes the pump for iPhone. There was just no other smartphone like it, and there would not be for quite some time. Um, BlackBerry was so convinced that they had the answer that they rode themselves into oblivion. I know they're still an IP company. I know they still have a couple of things out there, but they just didn't see that coming. Nokia. I remember in 2006, the guy I worked for at the television station where I worked, who did a financial show, was talking about there was no safer bet than Nokia as far as he was concerned because they owned phones, them and BlackBerry. Seek out either one now. I know you can find remnants, I know you can find pieces, but they're not who they were. So the iPhone was probably the biggest halo device. But I don't think it gets to happen the way it happened without the iPhone, without iPod, excuse me. Plus, I mean, did you actually I can't even remember how you used to sync your iPhone. I guess you had to have iTunes, didn't you? Anyway, what I found myself wondering about is, do we have that halo thing anymore, or is that just a way passe idea now? Because Apple Music is available on Android phones, but so is Tidal, and so is Pandora, and so is Spotify, and so is Deezer, and so is what's left of Rhapsody. Napster, is that what they're calling that now? I honestly don't remember. Those things are available everywhere. You can argue that Apple TV going on to Xbox is another example of the halo effect, but there's a ton of TV stuff that I can watch on my Xbox, including Netflix and Hulu and whatever entertainment stuff I assume Microsoft has to offer at this point. I mean, I can't tell if this at this point is trying to introduce people to the Apple ecosystem or if everybody has just gone ahead and decided, right, people have chosen their hardware platforms, people have chosen their services. We want to make sure that we can be on all of them so that we can be among the ones they choose. Is it just passive income for Apple at this point? I mean, sure, Apple would love to have more switchers coming, and they do have more switchers coming. 75% of the people who bought Apple Watch last quarter were new to the Apple Watch platform. 50% of the people who bought iPads and 50% of the people who bought Macs last quarter were new to both of those platforms. They're still looking for switchers. They're still happy to have people come over. But is the proliferation of services on each one of those about that now? Or is Pandora building in support for HomePod just, acknowledging, right, this is a big enough thing. This is a smart enough speaker. There are enough people out there that we're not getting that we want to get them too. Is Apple making Apple TV available on the Xbox as a convenience to people like me whose digital media is all bought or rented or whatever through iTunes, but I happen to be on my Xbox? I found myself wondering about the halo effect. I'm curious if you have thoughts on that as well. I'm always curious what you think. I know you think I just say that, but really I'm curious what you think. Not now, I'm talking. I'm kidding. info@macosken.com, or you can leave a comment on this video, info@macosken.com. For the people listening to the audio podcast, a really cool thing that happens while this show is going on is there are people in the chat room chatting away. And in a moment, I'm going to go see what they had to say. Had somebody say, might have been Webb, I'm not sure, but had somebody say the other day that they almost enjoyed that part as much as the audio podcast, which means if you're only listening to the audio podcast, you're getting none of the picture and only 3/4 of the show. So 3:30 Pacific, 6:30 Eastern, Monday through Friday. The YouTube channel where you find it is youtube.com/Ken Ray. That was a big debate in my head, and I went with Ken Ray. I'm not sure it was the best idea, but there it is. youtube.com/Ken Ray. There you'll find the live shows when they happen. And of course, all the live shows that have happened so far are up there as well. More even than are in the podcast feed. So you might be down to negative half the picture. macOS Ken again tomorrow morning. We will do this live tomorrow afternoon. Talk to you soon. Because you guys are talking. You guys are over there in the chat room talking. I don't know. I've actually never gone back and watched the video. There's a way to watch it so that the chat is happening and people can see that too, right? I've dipped into the video. I think there's a way to watch it so that you can see that live. All right, I'm going back all the way to the top and seeing what needs to be addressed. Smoke Eater said he was wondering if the One More Thing title is usually held for game-changing gear, or is it just an often used tag now? It's not an often used tag now. See, the thing is, though, you can argue, I mean, this is a game-changing event. This is a game-changing event. Apple is now beholden to no one as far as when they can move on. I know that one of the reasons they went to Intel from, help me out, the Motorola processors. I think Motorola, gee whiz, I'm terrible. I know one of the reasons they went to that, though, is because it was a more regular, well, there were several reasons, but one thing was you got more regular updates from that. This is even, I mean, now they're masters of their own destiny. They're beholden to no one as far as the processors. Getting them produced, sure, but that's a question for operations. For Tim Cook's Tim Cook. Yeah, and Bill already got your question, Smoke Eater. They don't do that anymore, or don't do that much. You think this is the fourth one since Steve, Bill? Because I only remembered the one with the Apple Watch. It's the only time I remember seeing Tim Cook do it. I believe you because I have a memory like a goldfish. Randy likes the nod to Steve in the title. Yeah, I think that's why Tim Cook doesn't do it that much. It became a thing that Steve Jobs said. It became a thing that happened, pretty regularly because people loved hearing him say that. I think that's why Apple stays away from it a lot now. They'll pull that out when there's something big. With their AirTags. Yeah, maybe Frank. When Steve said one more thing, was it always just one thing? Seriously asking. Yeah, when Steve Jobs said one more thing, yes, because they never had an event that was called One More Thing, did they? Or did they? It was a thing that Steve would say at the end. Now, I was trying to remember, and I went looking for video. Did Steve Jobs say one more thing before introducing the iPhone? I know when he did the iPhone, he did the um, a phone, an iPod, an internet connected device, a phone, an iPod, an internet connected device. Kept doing that over and over again. But did he say one more thing before all of that? Because the only video that I saw that started that started partway into the presentation. Bill says it'll be interesting to see how confident Apple is with the first Apple Silicon if they put their biggest money makers and EOL. Oh, end of life, the Intel versions. That would be big. Hard to see them doing end of life on the Intel versions, though, Bill, for the reasons that we've talked about here a bit before, or maybe I talked about it in a few minutes. I can't remember. Businesses are buying. Businesses have plans to buy those machines years out. And so if Apple had come out and said, right, we're done, that's not going to happen anymore. I think the whole point of them saying we're going to do this for at least, we're going to support these Macs for a number of years and going to be putting out Intel-based Macs for at least a couple of years is to let business know they don't need to run and hide and try to figure out everything else because it's just an opportunity for Dell or, some other hardware maker to swoop in, I would think. Are they buying In-N-Out burgers for all of us, Frank? Yeah. See, I'm addressing these. You guys are already talking about it. Vern actually answered Bill's question. They have enterprise customers who need to run legacy x64 software, and all those creatives who bought those ultra expensive computers. I expect Intel support to continue for quite some time. There is a difference between supporting Intel and continuing to sell Intel, though. I think they'll support Intel for years to come. 5, 7, maybe. I would guess 7, actually, because if they're going to sell them for the next 2, I would think they were going to offer support for at least 5 after. That's a guess. Should be at least 5 years. That's what Frank said. Yeah, you know what? I'm just going to quit talking. I'm just going to read what you guys said and then read your answers. And then I'll scream violently if I disagree. Deborah says Steve's one more thing was always a surprise. Now everything is leaked. That honestly, Deborah, is why I was trying to figure out whether Steve said one more thing before the iPhone, because I know that we expected the iPhone that year. It was such a fever, like a frenzy. In fact, the TV show that I was producing on said it was an iPhone before Steve Jobs said it was an iPhone. And that freaked me out because I was really worried that we were going to get in some kind of trouble. Not because he knew anything, but because it wasn't going to be an iPhone. And then he was going to look stupid the next day on the air. But, it ended up being an iPhone, so it was okay. Do the Silicon Macs come with touchscreens? I doubt it. I think when Brian says like $500, do I mean that for the price? That feels awfully cheap. But I mean, then again, that's the salting the earth thing, right? Make it impossible for people to ignore. Would you buy a $350 Chromebook or a $500 MacBook? It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen because they would have to go plastic for that to happen. And Apple's not going to go plastic on them, I don't think. Again, unless it becomes a thing that you turn back in. Here's what I was thinking about earlier, and this is ridiculous. This is not anything that I think would happen, but it's just a thing I'm willing to say, the only way you go plastic is if you make that case your case. I can't show you the back of my computer, but it's got like 20, 25 stickers on it. I've never put a sticker on a MacBook in my life. And for some reason, this MacBook, I'm like, yeah, this one's mine. It's got all kinds of stickers from places I've been and stuff that I've done. The problem with renting hardware, at least on the consumer side, is it's really not yours. And you have to get used to that idea. People who get attached to hardware, which I don't really do that with my phones anymore. Shh, don't tell it. I don't really do that with my phones anymore, but I do with my computer. $500. You either have to go plastic or it doesn't really cost $500. You can't buy it for $500, but you can buy into it for $500, and then in a year when you're done, you switch it out for something else, which probably isn't gonna happen. All this stuff is just made up stuff that I'm doing. The problem I'm sorry, Bill is actually 20 minutes ago probably, talking about the touchscreen Mac idea. The biggest problem is how much Apple has complained about that. The biggest problem is how much Apple has said, "That's a horrible experience." But of course, Steve Jobs said, "What do we know about phones?" 6 months before they introduced the iPhone. And I believe he said nobody wants to watch video on a screen this size, talking about the iPod, weeks before he introduced the first video iPod. So, because Apple I mean, all Apple has to do to make the whole touchscreen Mac thing a reality is say, "We've always hated this idea because we feel like nobody got it right until now," and then it'll be the same pleasant touchscreen experience everybody else has, but in a way that only Apple could do. Wow, I like that, Bill. Bill says BlackBerry was a good proof that revenue is a trailing indicator of success. Do you cross stitch? I actually want to get a friend to cross stitch that and put it up. I think that'd be funny. Hmm. David is expecting a small MacBook Pro, AirTags, a bunch of time on Big Sur, and a big push for Apple One. All right. There's absolutely no reason to argue with any of that. I don't feel it, but there's no reason to argue with it either. Hey, I just lost everybody. Oh, there's Chuck. Halo effect. Maybe, but I think of it as the Apple ecosystem effect. The way Apple devices interact with and complement each other is the big draw. Right. Okay, I'm with you on that, Chuck. But what about putting Apple TV app on the Xbox? That's what I'm saying. Are the services that Apple is putting out there now enough to draw people in? Because iTunes and the way that managed the iPod was, I guess you could say, revolutionary. I hate that term because it's overused, but that was a big deal. Just being able to go into the Apple TV app on an Xbox and play video, which I can already do any number of ways, and nobody does it well yet. Nobody has a good, like, actual really good UI that makes me want it over any others, so I'm not sure. I think Apple is too big to really have a Halo anymore, says Bill. Yeah, maybe. Years ago, someone said that Apple would become an entertainment company. Who said that, Frank? Do you know? Hmm. Interesting. Vern says the halo effect is currently centered on the iPhone. If Apple begins to lower the cost of Apple Silicon computers after recovering development costs, that will be another halo center. That is really interesting. You're right, Vern. iPhone is the halo device. iPhone's going to be the halo device too, because once they have the Apple glasses, you're going to have for the foreseeable future, if not forever, a lot of the processing is going to happen on the phone, probably. Although, ooh, wouldn't that be interesting? Make an app that powers it for Android to give people an idea. The only problem is it's going to tie so much into so much other stuff in your life that Apple isn't going to want to share with any other hardware maker or software maker. So, yeah, I'm with you, Vern. Never mind. Forget everything I just said. I'm with you now. I don't think there's a halo effect, but rather a Borg assimilation effect, says David. Interesting. PowerPC. Thank you. Thank you. Motorola was before PowerPC. Right. I knew that. Thank you. I appreciate it. Nabil says, I'm not convinced that Intel support is going to be long lasting. When the PowerPC to Intel transition happened, there were some computers that only had OS support for 3 years. True, but there weren't nearly as many PowerPC Macs in the workforce as there are Intel-based Macs in the workforce today. I'm sure Apple would be more than happy to stop supporting it, in 2 years. I don't think they can because of all the enterprise implementations. You've got IBM, for crying out loud, talking until just a couple of months ago about how much they love their Macs over the Windows machines because it takes fewer people to maintain them. It takes much less maintenance. The users of Macs tend to be better about doing the maintenance that needs to be done rather than waiting for IT to kick them off their computer so they can take care of it. I think Apple is going to want to keep those people happy for a very long time, because if Apple screws them a year and a half into their contract or a year and a half into having their hardware, they're not going to look to Apple next time. They're going to look to somebody else who's going to guarantee them support for a number of years. I think Apple wants to be that. And so I think Apple will keep doing it. Now, a question would be, how long can you and I buy Intel-based Macs? Business can probably keep buying Intel-based Macs longer than you and I can, because business has business needs, and they've also got millions and millions and millions of dollars to blow. You and I, for whatever reason, if we still want an Intel-based Mac, my guess would be we'd have to go used. I would think there's going to be a time where the state of California is going to be able to buy an Intel-based Mac, and you and I will not. That's my guess. But again, I'm just making stuff up. Rent a computer. Yeah, but hopefully, Frank, it won't cost $1,000 a month. Hopefully it won't be like 3 times the price of just buying a computer if you did. $750, pay over 24 months for a very low price using Apple Card. Interesting. That's interesting, although you're playing two ends. Sorry, that was Brian. Brian says they could really push a mid to low price Mac, like $750, and pay over 24 months for a very low price using Apple Card. What's interesting is you're pushing into two different socioeconomic dynamics there, right? The people who can't afford to spend $1,000 on a computer aren't necessarily the people who have the credit rating to get an Apple Card. I mean, your thinking is interesting. I like your thinking. I like the way you're thinking on it. What if there's another thing too, where you can like buy a Mac and then, trade it in or an upgrade for next to nothing, which they may already have. I don't know. It never even occurs to me to trade in a Mac because I'm usually passing it on to somebody else. Vern says touchscreens will make sense after users start demanding it when they see a deficit in the UI of their iPhone, iPad software running on Big Sur. It's an interesting idea. And Nabil's responding to something I said earlier. So we have caught up. We're now back. We're now synced back in time. So you know what that means? I got to bounce, because I'm going to turn this around into an audio podcast and then keep writing tomorrow's Mac OS Ken, which I've already started. I got one more thing for you, okay? And this is not like one more thing, like one more thing. Here's why I'm aching for this show to grow. Because I love this conversation that you and I are having right now, and I want to find a way that we could work this conversation into the show. But that requires more people. That requires, in my head anyway, that requires a co-host and a producer. And maybe somebody listening right now actually volunteered their services for some of that, and I appreciate it, but I can't do it on a volunteer basis because we're only, one bad day away from not having a show all of a sudden. I need people that I can actually pay to do this, which means I need money to pay those people. And this is not me hitting you up for Patreon. This is me trying to get enough critical mass that it's generating revenue, either through monetization on YouTube or through ad sales through Backbeat or something like that, so that this show is bringing in money so that I could then find somebody to co-host with me, and then either they can read the chat room while I'm talking and they could bring something up and we could have that conversation, or we get a producer, we find a way to bring in calls, basically do what the old Mac OS Cat Live was, except do it more often because this conversation, Webb was right. This conversation gives me new ideas, gives me more fun stuff to talk about. Plus, I love hearing what you guys are thinking and saying. You guys and gals are thinking and saying, and you throw stuff out there that I didn't think of, and it's the exchange of ideas that really blows my whistle. I maybe should have stopped before I said that. Exactly, Brian. Brian says it helps think through the ideas and flush them out. I'm not picking on you, Webb. I'm saying you're right. I'm saying your email, man. You got me. You got me in the here. You got me in the here. I got to go. You guys are wonderful. I'm so glad you're here. And I'll see you here tomorrow.